Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, our mission is to really step away from the usual noise and headlines. We're going to take a single, incredibly profound story and use it as a kind of blueprint.
A blueprint for understanding mastery.
Right.
And wisdom itself.
Exactly. We are diving deep into an adapted tale from the 13th century Persian poet Rumi. It's a story known as Painting and Mirror, and you'll find it in the first book of his masterwork, the Masnavi.
And our source for this is Rumi's Tales in Wisdom. What's so powerful about this particular story is that it's not just an allegory for its own sake.
Yeah.
Rumi was a scholar, a true spiritual master. This is more like an architectural plan for how a person can acquire wisdom.
And what we're really looking for here isn't just a nice story. It's a total subversion of how we usually think about skill. We want to understand what mastery looks like when there are no visible materials, no fanfare. We're on a quest to figure out what happens when you stop just accumulating knowledge on the surface and start doing the kind of learning that is, well, purely about internal purification.
And this story sets that up immediately. It creates this stark rivalry between two completely opposite ways of working.
The elaborate versus the simple.
Precisely. One approach relies entirely on material resources, on a big visible output, and the other relies on, well, simplicity, stillness, and, as you said, internal purification. Two very different paths to truth.
And the genius of it, the real aha moment that Rumi builds to, is when this total lack of visible effort, of any output at all, somehow manages to multiply beauty. It leaves the king, the most powerful person in the room, just utterly bewildered.
Bewilderment is the goal. Rumi wants to force us to confront our own bias. Our bias towards what we can see and measure.
The busy work.
Exactly. The Romans in the story, they show us that our conventional metrics for skill, how much time you spend, how many resources you use, how complex the final product is, they're all fundamentally wrong when you're trying to measure something like inner truth.
So if you're a learner, or if you ever feel like you're just drowning in the sheer amount of information you're supposed to acquire.
The endless books, the courses, the certifications.
Right. And you're wondering if there's another path, a path toward deep understanding that isn't just about piling more stuff on, but about clarity. Well, this deep dive is absolutely for you. We're going to explore how Rumi uses this legendary contest to talk about cleansing the heart.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's set the stage. The scene opens in the court of a powerful king. This isn't just some local art fair. The stakes are high.
Right. The king's presence makes it a test of national pride, of wisdom, of a fundamental superiority. And the source material is very clear about the mood. The Chinese and the Roman painters were engaged in some serious boasting.
They weren't being subtle about it. Each group was talking up their own art, their own skills, and claiming to be the best.
And that boasting, that's the first clue Rumi gives us. It tells you the whole thing starts from a place of ego. They're not looking for truth. They're looking for external validation. They want to prove they're better than the other guy. And that need for proof, it sets them up for a major failure of perception later on.
So the king, being a practical guy, basically says, okay, enough talk. Let's have a test. We'll see who's really superior.
And the logistics of the challenge are key. The Chinese actually propose the setup. They say, give us one house and give the Romans another.
And crucially, there's a curtain separating the two houses.
That curtain is so important. It isolates the methodologies. Neither side can see what the other is doing. They can't influence each other. They can't critique each other. It's a clean experiment designed to show the results of two totally different ways of working.
And that difference becomes obvious the second they make their demands. Let's talk about the Chinese first. Their approach is what we could call the way of materials.
Right, and they don't waste any time. They jump straight into resource acquisition, which is, it's what you'd expect from any big project today, right? You get your budget, you order your supplies.
And Rumi gives this fantastic specific detail. They ask the king for 100 kinds of color.
100 kinds. It's the absolute opposite of simplicity. It symbolizes complexity, a reliance on external wealth, the idea that a great artist needs the biggest palette, the best tools, the most resources you can possibly get.
Their whole method is about active, resource-intensive creation. It's about adding, combining, applying. For them, mastery is about how much you can add to the canvas.
It's the additive mindset, pure and simple. They believe their output, the quality of their work, is directly proportional to their input. More colors means more beauty.
Which, as you said, is how so many of us think about learning. We collect sources, credentials, skills. We think piling them up is the key.
Exactly. Now let's pivot to the Romans. The way of refusal. This is where the story just flips everything on its head.
Because they demanded none of the king's materials. Absolutely nothing.
Zero. No budget requests, no shopping list for new tools. It's this immediate radical break from relying on external things. They're rejecting the whole Chinese philosophy of accumulation.
And they make their mission statement so clear. We have to sit with this quote for a second because it defines their entire path. They say, "Neither paint nor hue will suit our work, except to remove the rust too."
That line is everything. Neither paint nor hue. It's a complete, total rejection of the conventional tools. They're not saying, oh, we have our own special paints. They're saying, we don't need any paint.
They're redefining what art even is. Their only stated purpose is to remove the rust.
And there it is. The conflict is set. The Chinese are focused 100% on adding things, color, layers, complexity. The Romans are focused 100% on removing something.
Subtraction.
Exactly. They look at the wall not as a blank canvas to be filled, but as something that's already dirty, already obscured by an impurity, the rust.
For most of us listening, that sounds a little suspicious, right?
Yeah.
You might think, were they just trying to be clever? Or maybe they were poor and couldn't afford the materials?
And Rumi wants you to feel that tension. To an outsider, the Roman position seems arrogant, or maybe like an excuse. But in the story, it's a profound philosophical choice. They are betting everything on a single hypothesis.
Which is?
Is perfection achieved by adding things or by removing things? They believe the power they're looking for is already there, under the rust, just waiting to be revealed. It doesn't need to be imported from the outside.
So the immediate implication for us, as learners, is that maybe true mastery isn't about what we pile into our brains, the facts, the degrees, the books. Maybe it's measured by what we manage to scrape away. The rust being all the noise, the biases, the preconceived ideas that are clouding our clarity.
Yes, all that accumulation of knowledge the Chinese way, it often just makes your internal world noisier. The Roman way suggests you need profound silence, profound cleanliness, before you can truly receive anything. And that's the conflict that drives this whole story.
Okay, so the contest begins, the curtain is down, and the two processes could not be more different. Rumi's description of the actual labor is just perfect. Let's start with the Chinese.
The Chinese work was a spectacle. It was loud, it was visible, it was celebratory. They're constantly using their colors and materials. You can imagine the sounds, the activity.
And at the end, critically, after a few days, the sounds of music, drums, and celebration arise from their side.
Right, which signals they're done. That fanfare, the noise. It's the 13th century version of what we'd call hustle culture today.
That's a great way to put it.
The effort is visible, the progress is measurable, and the completion is announced with a big party. They want the king and the whole world to know that they worked hard, they used all the resources, and now their masterpiece is finished.
It's performance art on top of the actual painting. The work validates the material reality of their creation. They are masters of the art of doing.
Absolutely. Now let's switch to the other side of the curtain. The Roman process. It's the total opposite. Internal, quiet, focused,
Right.
and deliberately private.
They close the door to the public eye. Not just to keep their secrets, but you get the sense it's to block out any distraction.
And their entire work, all that time behind the closed door, is described as one single activity. They polish with zest.
I love that phrase, with zest. It's not just casual cleaning.
No. Zest implies passion, intensity, a focused and continuous energy. This is deep, committed labor. It's just directed inward at the surface of the wall itself.
So while the Chinese are adding 100 colors to create their world, the Romans are actively subtracting every single speck of impurity from theirs. And their goal in all this polishing is, well, it's cosmic. To make the wall as simple and clean as the celestial crest.
The celestial crest.
Yeah.
It evokes this idea of perfect purity, the edge of the sky, something flawless and clear. The contrast is just immense. The Chinese are using complex, earthly, manufactured things to cover the wall with their own imagination. The Romans are trying to make the wall itself disappear, to remove all traces of its own materiality so it can become a perfect extension of reality. They aren't creating an image. They're creating a state of perfect neutrality.
In a way, the Roman work sounds so much harder, mentally at least. To paint, you have a creative vision. To just polish, you're faced with endless monotony, endless imperfection, focused only on removal.
And that is exactly Rumi's point about the spiritual path. Accumulating knowledge, reading another book, taking another course, that's relatively easy, but achieving clarity, removing your ego, your resentment, the filters of your own bias, that takes intense, repetitive, and often totally invisible internal work. That's the polishing with zest.
So the work is done. The Chinese, with their drumming and celebration, call the king over first. They're ready to show off the conventional product.
And the king's reaction is exactly what they hoped for. The text says the king saw the painting and was amazed.
And this isn't just a casual, oh, that's nice.
Not at all. The source says the paintings were so beautiful that they entranced the mind. That's the maximum effect of great conventional art. It grabs you, it holds your attention, it demonstrates incredible skill in composition and color and application.
It completely fulfilled every expectation of what a masterpiece should be.
Yes. They proved their superiority based on every external metric that existed. The king is now completely convinced that he has just seen the absolute pinnacle of art. The bar has been set impossibly high.
Which is exactly where Rumi wants him and us to be.
Hmm.
Ready for the surprise.
Okay, so we've just seen this dazzling masterpiece of addition and complexity. Now the quiet, mysterious Romans invite the king to see what? Their polished wall.
You have to imagine the king's skepticism. He must be thinking, okay, they spent days rubbing a wall. What am I about to see? A clean wall.
Right. This is either some kind of joke or a complete failure.
But when he goes in, the first thing he sees is the result of their labor. The wall was as clear as a mirror. Perfect reflectivity. No rust, no color, no image of its own. It's more than just clean, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's prepared. It has no ego, no identity. It exists only to perfectly house whatever image is placed before it.
And then comes the climax. The moment of truth. The Romans drew aside the curtain.
The separation dissolves.
The world of external, man-made beauty, the Chinese painting, is suddenly brought face to face with the world of internal, purified potential. The Roman mirror.
And the effect is immediate, and it's dazzling. The Roman wall instantly catches the reflection of the Chinese painting.
But here is the absolute core of the story, the twist that changes everything. The reflection appeared, and its beauty multiplied, dazzling the eyes.
Multiplied, not just copied or duplicated. It multiplied. Let's really dig into that. Why would the beauty multiply?
Well, think about it. The original Chinese painting, as beautiful as it was a physical object. It was made of paint and canvas. It would have had tiny claws, right? A bit of dust, an uneven pigment, the inherent limitations of a material medium. But a perfect mirror doesn't reflect the material. It reflects the light. It reflects the pure form, the pure structure of the image, the physical impurities of the original just. They disappear in the reflection. The image becomes purer, more luminous.
So the mirror is stripping away the rust of the physical world from the painting itself.
Exactly. The perfect, unclouded mirror has no competing image, no distortion. It just receives the light and form perfectly, and in that perfect fidelity, it amplifies the inherent beauty. The potential of the painting is fully realized in the mirror.
That is a mind-bending outcome. The true masterpiece wasn't the thing that was created, but the surface that was prepared for perfect reception. And the king's reaction says it all.
He is completely overwhelmed. The text says the king was bewildered as to which painting was the original and which was the mirror.
The competition just ends. It dissolves. He can't even tell the difference between the material creation and the immaterial reflection. The mirror has become an essential, amplifying partner in the art itself.
This is the shocking nature of true mastery that Rumi wants to show us. The art that used 0 materials actually exceeded the art that used 100 colors.
And it did it just by achieving absolute clarity. The real skill wasn't in application, it was in preparation. The mastery was in what they removed.
And that forces us to ask ourselves a really hard question. Are we spending all our time trying to be the Chinese painters? Accumulating more colors, more facts, more data?
Well, maybe we should be spending more time being the Romans. Polishing the mirror of our own understanding.
Because if your internal state is cluttered, if it's biased, if it's rusty, then even the most brilliant information in the world is going to be reflected imperfectly, maybe even distorted. The Roman way suggests that if you can achieve that clarity, the world's knowledge will just come and house itself inside you perfectly. The real power isn't in creating, it's in receiving.
So the story itself is an incredible allegory. But Rumi doesn't just leave it there. He then transitions from this contest in a king's court to the spiritual path. This is where he tells us what it all really means.
Right, this is the philosophical application. He moves from painting walls to the ultimate internal project, transforming the self. And he gives us the key explicitly. He says, the Sufis are like the Romans.
The entire contest was a metaphor for the pursuit of spiritual wisdom.
And just like the Romans rejected the physical materials, the paints and hues, Rumi says the Sufis reject the conventional outward tools of scholarship.
Let's break that down. The text is really clear. The The Sufis do not have the usual academic tools. No lessons, homework, books, or repetitive study.
Now, this is a point that often confuses people. They think Rumi is anti-intellectual, that he's rejecting learning, but that's not it at all.
No.
He's rejecting the method of learning that relies purely on external accumulation. The Chinese painters are like the scholars who just endlessly collect facts, memorize texts, and build these huge, elaborate mental systems.
Right.
The Sufis, on the other hand, realize that all that external study, if you do it without any internal purification, it can actually create more rust, more intellectual pride, more fixed opinions that just cloud your judgment.
So if they're not reading stacks of books, what is their work? What is their version of polishing with zest?
It's entirely internal, the text says. They have cleansed their hearts. That's the core practice. In Sufi tradition, the heart, the qalb, isn't just for emotion. It's the organ of true perception, of spiritual cognition.
So if the Romans removed rust from a wall, the Sufis are removing the spiritual gunk from the heart. And Rumi gets very specific about what that rust actually is.
He does. He says they remove evil, enmity, and jealousy.
Which brings this very abstract idea of cleansing right down to a practical psychological level. These aren't just vague sins. They are powerful emotional filters that literally prevent us from seeing reality clearly.
Let's make that concrete. How does something like jealousy act as cognitive rust?
Oh.
Imagine you harbor jealousy towards a colleague. Your heart isn't clear. Now that colleague presents a genuinely brilliant idea. That's the Chinese painting. If your internal mirror is rusty with jealousy, you won't be able to see that idea for what it is.
You'll distort it. You'll think, oh, it's a good idea, but he probably got lucky, but I bet he stole part of it.
Exactly. The rust of jealousy prevents you from appreciating the true and beauty right in front of you. And in doing that, it robs you of the chance to learn from it, to reflect it, to amplify it.
So the biggest obstacle to real understanding isn't a lack of intelligence or resources. It's these moral and emotional impurities that act as distortion filters.
Absolutely. The polishing work is ethical work. It's psychological work. It's about achieving a state of neutrality so the world can be reflected perfectly. And once you do that, the heart itself becomes the masterpiece. Rumi calls it the mirror heart.
And he describes its properties. First, it's capacious enough to accept every image.
Capacious, boundless, infinite. This is so important. A computer's hard drive gets full. A canvas can only hold so many layers of paint, but the mirror heart never becomes full. It's always ready for the next image, the next piece of reality.
And that readiness means it has to take in everything without picking and choosing. It has to reflect it all, the good or bad, ugly or beautiful.
This is the ultimate non-judgment. A perfect mirror reflects an ugly image just as faithfully as a beautiful one. It doesn't become the ugly image. It's not permanently stained by it. It just reflects the reality of it.
That's true understanding. The ability to see reality as it is in its entirety without filtering it based on what makes us comfortable.
So to bring this back to you, the listener, the learner, if you're trying to master something complex, true understanding isn't about retaining every single fact, like filling up a container.
No.
It's about developing your reflective capacity, like the Romans did. The clearer your internal state, the more capacious it is, the more perfectly you can house and process and amplify any information that comes your way. It's the difference between memorizing the painting and becoming the perfect mule for it.
Okay, so once Rumi establishes the heart as this perfect, capacious mirror, he explains the consequences of that state. It's a kind of freedom, an ability to see beyond our normal sensory limits. He calls it moving beyond the outer shell.
Yes, this is where the Sufi path really detaches from the constraints of the material world. The text says that these people of the mirror, the masters of clarity, have freed themselves from color, scent, measure, and volume.
Let's unpack those four. Color and scent are our sensory perceptions. Measure and volume are how we quantify the world, how we give it dimension. So they've freed themselves from the way the physical world defines itself. They're seeing past the surface data.
Precisely. They recognize that those four things are just the superficial attributes. They are the outer shell. The Chinese painters were masters of the shell. They manipulated color and volume perfectly. But the Romans, the Sufis, they were after what's inside the shell.
So for a modern learner, that outer shell could be what? The specific jargon of a field, the political framing of an argument, even just the style of a presentation.
All of the above. We so often mistake a good presentation, the perfect color, for a core truth. The person with the polished mirror heart can see past that packaging.
They are consciously setting aside the outer shell of knowledge and art. It's an active choice to prioritize depth over surface.
And the result of that choice, their ultimate achievement, is that they reach the essence and truth of the world. The essence is what's left when you strip away the color, the scent, the measure, and the volume. It's the pure, unadulterated reality.
I have a real question here, though.
Hmm.
Let's say you're trying to learn something concrete, like, I don't know, quantum physics or a new programming language.
Yeah.
You have to engage with the outer shell, right?
Yeah.
The syntax, the formulas, the specific terms. That's the measure and volume of the knowledge. You can't just ignore it.
That's a brilliant question, and it gets to the heart of Rumi's subtlety. He's not saying you should ignore the shell completely. He's saying you shouldn't become attached to it.
Ah.
The Chinese painters were attached to their colors. They were defined by them. The Sufi, or the true master, can engage with the colors, use the formulas, speak the jargon, but their own reflective surface isn't clouded by it. They remain detached from its influence.
So it's about not letting the delivery system define the message. The goal is to get your own inner clarity so perfect that you can perceive the essence of new information, the core principle, the underlying logic, without getting bogged down by the color and scent of how it's presented.
Think about it like reading two conflicting news reports on the same event. One is written with really emotional language and has a slick design that's a lot of color and scent.
Right.
The other is just a dry list of statistics.
Hmm.
The person with the polished mirror can look at the emotional article and immediately strip away the persuasive language to find the core data. They use the shell, but they aren't controlled by it.
So the conventional knowledge, the Chinese painting, is still valuable. It's the image. But the true master, the Roman, is the one who can house that knowledge, amplify it perfectly, without spending all their energy just trying to create it or possess it directly.
Exactly. The power is in that detached receptivity. That state of perfect stillness becomes the highest and most potent form of intellectual activity. It's perfect amplifying reflection.
We've now arrived at Rumi's final and maybe deepest analogy. He moves beyond the mirror to explain the nature of the reality that the Sufi is actually trying to perceive. He uses light and color to describe this ultimate state of insight.
This is the metaphysical peak of the story. It connects the internal clarity of the mirror directly to the ultimate nature of the universe, the source of light. And the grand premise is that all colors, all distinctions, eventually lead back to colorlessness.
Which suggests a journey, right? As you get closer to the source of things, the differences we perceive, the colors, they start to merge, to dissolve, until only the source remains. And that source is, itself, undefined by any single color.
It's the journey from the many back to the one. And Rumi uses this beautiful analogy of cloud versus light to help us see it. He says the colors, all the different things in the world, the data, the complexity, are like clouds.
Clouds are defined. They have shape, they're temporary, they're always changing. They represent the world of forms, of appearances, everything the Chinese painters were experts in creating.
And colorlessness, the ultimate reality, is like the light of the moon or the sun.
Light is pervasive. It's the source of illumination that lets us see everything else, but it doesn't really have a fixed shape or boundary itself.
So the Chinese were mastering the art of painting the clouds, mastering form. The Romans were trying to become like the light itself.
But Rumi goes even deeper, defining the source of perception. He points out that the color and the shape we see in the clouds, it's not inherent to them. It's actually derived from the sunlight and moonlight passing through them.
This is the crucial separation between appearance and essence. We get so distracted by the shape of the cloud, the details of a news story, the particular style of a philosophy, that we forget the only reason we can see it at all is because of the universal light that's illuminating it. The color isn't in the cloud, it's an effect.
And the final piece of this puzzle is the nature of the light itself. This leaves it colorless.
That is the absolute truth in this analogy. The essence of reality is colorless. It's pure potential, pure illumination. It's the unmanifest source of all the colors we see. So the Sufi, having polished their heart into a perfect mirror, isn't trying to capture the colored clouds anymore. They're trying to perceive the colorless light that is the source of all of them.
So, to bring it all back to the contest.
Yeah.
The Chinese painting was the beautiful, intricate, colored cloud.
Yes.
But the Roman wall, by becoming perfectly pure, achieved the quality of the light itself. By removing all the colors of their own ego and biases, they became the colorless source that could then illuminate the colorful world perfectly.
And that's why the king was so bewildered. The Roman wall was so pure it became the source of illumination for the Chinese painting. It turned the painting into the cloud and the mirror into the light. It completely redefines what success is. Success isn't creating the most complicated cloud. It's achieving the clarity needed to see the light that makes all clouds possible.
It's the difference between mastery of the world and mastery of self, which then gives you perfect access to the world. Just incredible.
Mm.
Outro. What an amazing journey that was. We started with two groups of painters boasting in a court, and we ended up dissecting the very nature of truth. If there's one core takeaway from this deep dive, it's that inner purification, that polishing with zest. It's not just some nice ethical idea. It is the highest, most effective form of skill acquisition there is.
Mm. The silent work of polishing the heart is shown to be more powerful than the noisy, expensive work of accumulating 100 colors. Rumi forces us to face this choice every single day. Do we pursue knowledge through accumulation, the Chinese way, or do we pursue wisdom through reflection, the Roman way?
And true wisdom, it turns out, isn't about how much stuff you can cram into your head. It's about your capacity to reflect the world in a way that actually multiplies its beauty.
By achieving that clarity, you transcend the need to constantly create or hoard information because you become the perfect, boundless vessel for reality itself.
So we want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought based on that incredible analogy of colorlessness. If the ultimate truth, the light, is colorless, what are the clouds in your own life?
Yeah.
What are the deeply held opinions, the emotional attachments, the comfortable ways of thinking that, currently define your shape and your color, but might actually be obscuring the essence of the light?
And think specifically about the rust you might need to remove. Is it a particular enmity or jealousy that stops you from learning from someone? Is it just the clutter of too much information, too much jargon that's messing up your internal canvas? What one act of subtraction, of rigorous polishing could you practice today to make your own internal mirror just a little more dazzling?
Because only by removing those distractions can we achieve the kind of clarity that lets us amplify the beauty and truth of every single image the world casts upon us.
A powerful thought to end on.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into Rumi's wisdom. We'll see you next time.